taking my pause, Jess. Make sure you edit this out. Welcome back to episode 4. I feel like it's been forever since I recorded an episode, since we were kind of in that launch rush of getting the first couple out, and then I got delayed with transition to school and summer to fall and all of the things, but I'm so excited to be back. And I am here today to talk about a topic that still feels edgy for me to talk about. I'm going to be talking about all things money. And as always, I often am sharing wisdom and stories and experiences from my own journey or shared experiences with clients, and what I've witnessed them go through. And that's really where I like to work from and guide people from is those, my expertises as well as lived experiences. And so I also want to start this episode out with the caveat of I am not a money expert. I am not an accountant. I am not a financial advisor. This is really doing some storytelling and weaving around a topic that's just so taboo for us in this society, especially if we fall into particular categories. Being a woman and all of that, it's just felt so taboo always. It wasn't even until the 70s or 80s, and I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, where we were allowed to get our own credit cards. That's wild. Like, that's in my lifetime. It's edgy for me to talk about this, but it's been coming a lot up in conversations, both with clients and with people considering on becoming clients. And it's also been coming up a lot for me recently as I go through some really big expansion in business. So I am going to do a little bit of some sharing around some old money stories and how money stories impact our lives. I am going to talk about the first big stretch I had to make around money and mindset. And I thought I was good after that, and then realized that there was still another big stretch. And now seeing that, there's probably going to be some more big stretches I have to make around money. But I am going to be really, really edgy, and start this episode off by saying that my business, for the first time ever, has surpassed 6 figures in a fiscal year. I have built a 6-figure business. And for those of you listening who are, struggling and scared and overwhelmed and just don't see that for yourselves, I want you to know that I was there too, not too long ago. And I built a 6-figure business. I want you to borrow my evidence. And growing. I'm on my way to building a multi-6-figure business. And there's some things around that I feel really strongly with. But I also don't want to take away from the fact that I did that and it is possible. I am a big, big believer in my core values of, paying back and hiring people that my business then supports and all those things. And even if I didn't believe all those things, I would still get to celebrate the fact that I built a 6-figure business. I've been talking about it for the first time online just in the last couple weeks, which feels edgy because I think there's so much judgment around money, right? We often, not always, equate good with not making money and slimy and gross with making a lot of money. And so I think there was a part of me that held back around talking about it for a while, those wins and those successes. I have gotten really good and really work with my clients on getting really good at celebrating yourself and celebrating the wins, right? It's not being too braggy. It's not being too loud. You get to celebrate. You get to be excited about what you've done. But for a while, I was keeping the money piece really closeted for a couple reasons, because of the shame piece, because of the guilt, and also some fear around it was just going to disappear and I was a fraud and all of that. And deep down, I don't believe that, but that was all patterning that I had to and still have to work on to this day. So I just kind of wanted to frame us up with that. And with that, I'm going to lead into this idea around money stories. Money is with us from the day we are born, right? Because we are influenced by the people around us and the people before us and their money stories. And that's like so many other things in society: food, habits, philosophical beliefs, values, all the things. But we're going to zoom in on money for the purposes of this episode. And I think that it's really interesting because often we carry the baggage of other people's money stories, generation above us or several generations above us, because of what they went through with money. I grew up in a family that was pretty blue collar. I should let me back up. I should say my parents grew up in very blue collar families, working families, Long Island to upstate, New York City to upstate, tradespeople, service members, police officers, firefighters, all of that. Very blue collar, large families, not a lot of large income. And because my parents grew up in that, they were impacted by that, which means I was impacted by them and their experiences. And, as my parents were making shifts, middle class, all of that, there are other pieces that we grew up with, in the age I grew up where my parents were, young adults and adults in the age of credit cards for the first time. And that being like a newer thing in our society and not making great decisions with credit cards. And, I'm really proud of them now, all these years later, because of what they did to fix that and put themselves in better positions. And we talk about that a lot. But there were times in my childhood where money was probably worse off than I realized. And that had an impact on all of us, right? That strain, that stress. I don't think I really understood it or started to notice a difference until I got into high school and had friends from affluent families and just didn't even realize that there was that other like way of living and this feeling of a disconnect or shame about my house or any of that. And so we carry and package all of those things into our professional careers, into our families, into our businesses. And add on a layer of that for me was I chose professions that historically didn't make a lot of money, right? Going back to that, doing good in the world means being broke. I have a mentor that calls it the broke healer mentality. And so kind of have spent that whole bit of my childhood and even college, post-college, young adulthood in all of those beliefs that I will never make a lot of money. Uh, and that's hard. That's hard to kind of have that mindset and belief. And I was at a retreat a few years ago. It was a really powerful retreat for me where I've had a lot of my downloads that really shifted my business and my outlook on my business. And we were doing a guided meditation around money stories. And one of the pieces, it may not even have been specific to money stories, but we got in the meditation, in the guided piece, we got into this room where and it's all fuzzy now, but really what it all boils down to is I got to this point where I realized that one of the most impactful things on like stunting my growth was a comment that a loved one said to me anytime I talked about wanting to be an artist, anytime I talked about wanting to start my own business, and this was a really well-intentioned, well-meaning comment, was, will you be able to make enough money to support yourself doing that? Can you make money doing that? And it was coming from a space of care. It was coming from a space of their own money stories and fears around money. And yet it had such a big hold and impact on me because I carried that doubt and that belief and that money mindset that I couldn't do the things I loved and make a lot of money. And that's been a big thing to work through and release. And I bet that you all have small, seemingly little experiences like that actually have a bigger hook on you from a money standpoint and a fear standpoint than you realize. So I'd encourage you to just like pause and think like, what are the stories, and maybe jot them down in a journal. What are the stories that I'm carrying around right now about money? Because as I started to get into building my business, especially with some influence from the online business world, I started to see women talking out there about this idea that when we invest in ourselves, money comes in. And I was like, nah, I don't believe that, right? And I'm going to share some stories later where that actually happens. But I started seeing people, women, leaders especially, talking about money differently. And it started to like slowly chip away at this idea that I couldn't do good in the world and make good money. And so I started to like slowly work on that. I started to buy in, right? Um, because before I was bought into that idea of, oh, your undergrad degree's in social work, you're going to be broke the rest of your life. Oh, here's the evidence that you're actually going to be broke because you graduated in the early 2000s during, a tumultuous financial time, recession um, in our country, couldn't get a job. I couldn't barely get a job making minimum wage at the time. And so then I had evidence that because I was studying social work and wanted to do good in the world and help people, I'd always be broke. And so I was bought into that, but now suddenly here I am, fast forward almost 20 years, and I'm starting to see and buy into this different belief and way of being. And it still hung on, right? I wanted to lead with joy and play and mentor people on those things, mentor leaders and mentor business owners. And I couldn't unhook from this idea that two extremes actually. First, I couldn't unhook from this idea for a while that if I led with joy, people wouldn't hire me. They wouldn't buy into that. They want to see immediate return on their investment, which isn't actually true, right? And the other idea I hooked on to also, and they almost seem opposing, was I also didn't want to associate yet with the idea of being called a business coach because I felt like there were so many slimy things around that and money. And now I've made peace with both of those things, and it can be both and. I can lead with joy and play and mentor business owners, business leaders, all of those things, right? I am a joy and strategy mentor for business owners. That's what I do. Yes, I have backgrounds in business, in marketing, in leadership, and I layer in all of those things. But what I do is use tools like play to help people prioritize themselves and their joy so that they can build successful businesses, so that they can keep growing and scaling their business. It's both and. And I had to do that work to really unhook from those beliefs that I had so that I could eventually marry the two together, which wasn't on my radar at all until I got there. And so now I'm finally like, okay, I get to do this. I believe in this deeply. I have this deep knowing that I'm going to be okay. Even through the hardest, darkest times when I'm having doubts, all those things, there was still this deep anchoring in my why that if I built my business the way I wanted to, I could make a lot of money because that would line back up with my why, freedom and flexibility to create the life that I want to live. And for me, making a lot of money doesn't mean luxury cars, all that stuff. For me, making money means being able to, you know, live on my homestead and buy more land and provide for my family. For me, making a lot of money means being able to send my daughter to a school that I think and my partner think is the best fit for her right now in the season of life, right? It's that it provides financial freedom, provides so much. And so I finally was on board with that. And I thought I had gotten through all my money stuff, right? That was my first, I told you I'd talk about my stretches. That was my first really big stretch. I thought I had gotten on board with that. And then now that I'm starting to make the money and build a successful business, build the revenue in my business so I can start paying myself. Now my numbers are, showing up where my revenue not necessarily what I'm taking home, but my revenue is double what my salary was in higher ed. And my salary in higher ed wasn't that great because, again, it's the system we've created where people who are doing good in the world don't make a lot of money, right? I'm not saying that that's the case for everything. I'm saying that that's a system that a lot of us have bought into. And so I'm suddenly doing the thing, and I realize that I'm paralyzed and can't talk about it. I'm so good at being vulnerable online, sharing lessons learned, sharing my wisdoms, because I believe in that. And I believe that when we go through life experiences and then share that wisdom out and share the lessons learned, it helps other people. That's what my entire business model is built around in terms of my marketing. But yet I couldn't share this one piece because I was still so wrapped up and worried that people were going to judge me for making money, that people were going to judge me for wanting to make money. And I had to lean into my supports, my coach, my mentor, my family, to really be reminded that one, I get to talk about this and celebrate this, and two, there are people out there that need to hear these stories because they need to see that there's evidence. In my group program this summer, Permission to Be, it's an 8-week summer group adventure I run. It came up on one of our calls, and kind of even unrelated to the theme we were talking about, but it came up with a question, and I shared some of this and immediately started getting pings and private messages from the people in the group saying, you have to talk about this. I wish I had known this. I wish I'd heard you talk about this sooner. This is so important. This should be a reel. And it hit me that I was doing a disservice to my clients and my people by not showing up and talking about my money story, my money stuff, my money issues, and my money wins and my money successes. And that's when it shifted for me. And that's when I was like, this needs to be a podcast episode. I'm going to start putting this on social media more. And, it's super normal when we start marketing ourselves, especially as personal brands, especially as heart-centered business owners, all of that. We will hit these little roadblocks, whether it be money, whether it be selling, whether it be sharing our stories, where we'll get all in our head talking about, people don't want to hear it, people will unfollow me. And whether it's money or any other thing that you're afraid to talk about, but want to talk about, I'm here to remind you that you get to. People need to hear it, and the people that drop away didn't need that message anyway. This is big stuff because even though it's money or any other topic we're talking about, this is being an online business owner, being a brick and mortar business owner, being a business owner in general is not for the what's the phrase, the faint of heart. You are constantly every day faced with all of your shadows, faced with all of your stories, faced with all of your doubts and all of your fears. And that's why when you work with anyone, first of all, I encourage you to work with someone. Find a mentor, coach that is the right fit for you at this season of your life, because you're going to want support on all the strategies, all the marketing, all the shiny stuff. But if you aren't ready to sit with and face and explore and play with and confront and hold all of the fears and things that are coming up for you, it's going to keep you here. It's going to burn you out. It's going to prevent you from reaching the potential that all of the strategy in the world can't help with. And that's always why it's both and. Money comes up as the excuse or reason when really it's those other things underneath. Worthiness of investing in myself, being scared that I'll fail, being open to receiving support and help. We use money as the excuse, but really it's unpacking some of those other pieces. So many times when I have someone come to me that wants to work with me in some capacity and money comes up as the issue, it's valid. It's real. Paying the bills is a real thing. Not wanting to go into debt is a real thing. We are not going to take away from that. And oftentimes there's something else under that too that we lean on the money for as a little bit of a crutch. So it's, can we separate those two pieces out and look at them both so that we can make a truly empowered choice, a truly empowered, yes, I'm going to invest in this now, or no, I'm not going to, and here's why. Right? When we start to make those shifts, I see time and time again in my own business, in my clients' businesses, that when we do release some of those other fears and we do take the leap, and it was the right leap, right? We make that move. When big investments like that go out energetically, big stuff comes in. We have to make room for the next thing energetically. And I have two really fascinating recent experiences. Both happened in the same week. Recently, I thought I was going to not make another big investment in my business until next year. And then some stuff kind of got shaken up and changed. And I reached out to a past person that I wanted to work with again, that again I had on my kind of vision board, strategy board for 2025, and started having discussions about starting that sooner. And made the commitment, made the decision, waited till it made sense financially also, right? Both energetic and strategic, grounded decision that I made together. And I made that payment for a deposit, and they messaged and they said, now you know someone's going to come in ready to work with you this week. And I was like, you're right. Like, that's the goal. And she said, it's already happening. It's already happened. And I kid you not one, but two people. One signed up, and then a second person signed up and paid in full, which was not my expectation at all based on conversations with that person. So another piece of the money stuff is we never know what other people are going through. We don't get to decide if people can or can't afford us. We get to decide what our rates are, and then they get to decide if that's the right thing for them and how they're going to make that work. Now, there's things we can do to make stuff accessible, but we always do it from an empowered place for us. So that's one story. And then similarly, had a very, very similar experience with a client who, in the same week, one of those people who were getting ready to sign up, said yes. We sent the link for payment. And within the hour, had an email from a new client saying that they wanted to sign up. And money was a really big fear for this person, and very valid fear. So, but they trusted, checked in with themselves, asked for support navigating along the way. There was never pressure for them to do it from me. It was always kind of someone to talk through things and fears with before they made the decision to invest. And then they said an empowered yes. And they got an answer by also having someone invest in them, in their field, in their industry. And it's just wild to me. It's a wild adventure being on here with all this stuff, but I really, really want to kind of come in and paint some of the pictures for you all so you could make some connections to stories that you may be telling yourself from evidence you've had historically, but maybe you're holding on to, and where can you release them, and where can you create new evidence and new stories. And what I share with clients often is, if we don't have the evidence ourselves, and I inherited this ideology from another brilliant mentor, if we don't have the evidence ourselves, we borrow evidence from other people to help us believe it until we've created the evidence for ourselves. So hopefully some of this storytelling around money and my personal experiences with money and shifting my mindset and shifting my beliefs around it can help some of you all begin to make those shifts. Now, I want you to pause, check in with yourself, see what you need after listening to all of this. Do something fun for yourself, a dance party, a walk in the woods, a nap, whatever it is that you need. But don't forget to prioritize you so that we can grow these big, successful, beautiful businesses and lives.